allow you guys. Otherwise, we'll catch you next week. So, Greg.
Yes.
I'm about ready to fight right now. No, I'm just kidding. So what do you do? How do you make up after a fight? Now, I actually read an article, and they said, what's good about a fight? And then they did the little wiggle eyebrow just about, and I could almost read it in the article where it says, the good makeup connection. I don't know if we can say sex on Facebook.
I think we can say sex. Sex.
Okay, that's all we're going to say. But, there is this place where there is the makeup afterwards. But making up after a fight is so much more than just sex, right?
Yeah, it is actually. And, we truthfully don't fight a lot anymore, but we used to fight a lot. The cool thing about it is that today, when we do have a couple of best practices, some things that we've learned over the years that have helped us to be able more quickly and more effectively than we see like all kinds of other people in here, but we still don't see.
All right, Brandon, Melissa, you're just going to have to listen today. All right, we're done with that.
Anyway,
talk to me, please.
And so one of the things that we typically, Julie, if we're going to fight, you want to look at me or do you want to look at the camera?
Well, I'm still trying to figure it
you.
out. I know. See, we're getting ready to fight right now. Okay, yes.
I don't think we should do that, honestly. I think we should talk more about what we do to make up for it.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Let's do it.
Let's do that then. Okay. Now, when we fight, what is the one subject, if we fight, that almost always is assuredly the subject matter of our fight?
Parenting.
Parenting. Anybody else have any disagreements when it comes to parenting? Parenting philosophies, how you do this, how you do. You don't have to stand on tippy toes. What are you doing?
Quit fighting with me. Let's keep talking. Parenting. Parenting is one of those things, though, isn't it? I think, and we share a lot of times at conferences that I am the epitome of an encourager. Greg's a person of excellence. We both love our kids. But those two core values clash a lot of times of how we express and in our parenting.
They do, because my point, if you will, is that your hair is that I don't want my kids to grow up mediocre, and I don't want my kids celebrating mediocrity and thinking that mediocrity is awesome, and sometimes I think if we're not careful, because we love our kids, we can pet them a little bit too much, and so therefore when they face life in the real world, I just don't want them to get their butt handed to them, because everybody's not going to celebrate every little thing that they do and say that it's awesome.
Right. So there are times. Well, yeah, I'm the encourager. I want them to know they're loved. I want them to know that they have purpose in this world and that they can do anything that they put their mind to.
Right.
And so that's where sometimes we clash. So what do we do after we have one of those head button kind of moments?
Well, I think the first thing...
Believe it or not, we still do occasionally. Not very often, but every once in a while we get a little bit sideways. It's when he's not behaving.
It's always when I'm not behaving.
Yeah.
It could be something to do... Well, I won't even go there.
Go on,
anyway.
yeah.
So I think the first thing is when we realize that we're butting heads and that we're really beginning to clash, then we take a cool down period.
Yep.
And so I want to encourage you that step one for making up is to have a cool down period, because once we get to that place where we're butting heads and we're really not coming together and we're things are not working well, it's starting to get heated. There's sort of it's counterintuitive, I think, for us to realize, because what happens is that our adrenal glands kick in. Once that happens, then the blood literally flows from your brain into your outer extremities, and you're not thinking clearly. And so you tend to want to engage more. But the best thing...
I want to engage, all right.
The best thing that we've learned to do is to hit the pause button and get our emotions together and have a cool down period. And it's not like we say, okay, let's take 5 and come back together. It's more like we just kind of maybe go in separate rooms. We may step outside, avoid the whole slamming the door thing and all that good stuff. It doesn't prove anything. It just adds to the situation. But the times when what matters, these basic steps matter the most, is when they're the most counterintuitive, And so I think understanding that when we're not in a fight, so that when it comes up, kind of that ground rule is established, that once we begin to, it's like, okay, hey, look, let's table this for now.
Yep.
And let's come back to it later on. And so we have a cool down period. What do you like to do during your cool down period?
During my cool down period, I usually Well, I cool down. I try to just pause. And I think, okay, the truth is, hey, Melissa wants to be added to the video. Oh, let's do it. We can add them.
There it is.
There it
Approved.
is.
Yeah.
They're going to be adding. But what I do in that cool down period is I slow down and I ask myself, what is it that we really want? And what is it that we do agree on? Because the truth is that in any time that you have this confrontation, there is a place where you have to almost agree to disagree, right? But then because you have a different point of view, I have a different point of view, but the way that we've done this with our parenting is we really have said, okay, what do we agree on?
Yeah.
What can we say that these are the things where we fall apart or we go sideways, and we're going to express it differently, but there's a lot that we do agree on. And so I think part of making up is saying, coming back together then after that cool down. And in the cool down, I'm thinking, okay, he is for me. We are one. We love one another. This shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have gotten, we don't, either one of us want this.
Right.
And that's kind of the self-talk. And then we come back together and we'll say, okay, I'm sorry, can go a long way, right? And
yes. Pause on that though,
Okay.
because there's an explanation
Yep.
to what you're saying while we're. So it was trying to add you guys in, by the way, Brandon and Melissa, but then that icon went away, so I don't know where you went. Try again.
Yeah.
And we'll approve it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you say we apologize, the clarification that I wanted to make is that we don't always come back together and apologize for the difference that we had in our opinion. You know, sometimes I might come back and say, I'm sorry for the way that I responded. I'm sorry that I lost my temper, or I'm sorry that I responded to you the way that I did.
Right.
Are you at a place where we can begin to discuss this
Have a conversation.
and have a conversation that's not as emotional at
Right.
this
And
point?
sometimes my cool down might be a little bit longer than his, or his cool down might be a little bit longer than mine.
And so
we would say, you know what, actually, no, I need a little bit more time. I love you, but I'm not ready yet. But if the
and that
person,
always sucks when you do that, just so you know.
yeah, you too. But the point is,
Do I do that?
I think we're always usually. I mean, we're pretty good. We've been practicing this for 22
Yeah, but
years.
I'm not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, do I do that? Have there been times when I
Yeah, you've actually
said I'm not ready yet?
I think so. Yeah.
I think I probably have actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
But all that to say is, it's coming back to the intent. My intent was never to, and I'm sorry that I did. So are you at a place that you can talk about it? And when the other person says, yeah, let's talk about it, what we do at that point is we do say some things that affirm one another. I love you. I am for you. The things that we've processed in our cool down time, right? Of the truth is I don't like fighting. I know you don't like fighting. So let's start talking about what we do agree on. And we start talking about that common ground.
Okay.
Right?
So that is such a key part of making up after a fight, right? We have to establish, we have to pause, have our cool down period. When we do come back together, we establish, hey, can we have this discussion now without as much emotion? Can we have an intelligent conversation? Right? And then we ask, what is it that we do agree on? Let's start. So you said we affirm one another first.
Right.
And so here's what I believe the best about you. I choose to believe the best. We kind of lay out, again, some affirmations with one another to level the playing field once again, and to lower those emotions and speak truth and speak life over one another. And then we establish, what is it that we agree upon?
Right.
Now, when it comes to our kids, in this case, using a real life example so that they can kind of see how this plays out, right? We might say, okay, so what do we agree on? Well, let me ask you this. You would say, do you want the kids to feel loved unconditionally?
Yes.
And you might say, do you want the kids to believe that they can do anything that they want under God's authority?
Yes.
Yes. I might say, yes, I agree with all of those things too. And then I might ask you, well, love, do you want them to stand out in a crowd as being successful, above average people in this world?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you want them to celebrate mediocrity?
No.
Right.
Right. And so what we're doing in that is we're just reminding one another of the importance of
Of what
what
it
we,
is that we agree on.
yeah,
And then from there, we merge those two. Okay, what else do we agree on? And then
yeah.
what, honey? Help me.
Yeah, no, no, it's with all of that then, what we begin to do is we're talking about fighting, not necessarily just the parenting part. So what from that then, from the after the building on the common ground, what do we do from that point?
Well, once we establish common ground, then we begin to establish where we go from here. What do we need to do?
But with that then, and that's what I was trying to, there was a lot of different distractions, but the point is once you establish those things of common ground, it's great to also do this outside of a fight. If you have those age-old recognizable fights, the things that you're going to come back to after a fight that you can't agree on, and then how do we move forward from there? And usually in this part, I'm taking responsibility for my part of what I need to do to make sure that we don't butt heads again. We begin to devise a plan so that we can not only make up, but also move forward from
Yeah,
maybe some of those age old
and we
things.
look and we begin to ask different questions than when we're emotional about it. We begin to ask questions about how can I support your point of view? How can we merge the two point of views in order to, because the strength of any team is in the diversity of the team. It's our differences that make us better parents,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise I might exasperate. And on any subject matter, whether it's your finances, whether it's your faith, whether it's politics, whether it's how he or she folds the washcloths.
What you're
I
going to do
mean?
on the weekend, where you're going to
Exactly.
spend Thanksgiving. I mean, it could be a numerous amount of different
And
things.
I think that a huge part of coming together after a fight again is reestablishing affirmatively what we really believe about one another and what we believe
Right.
about our relationship and who we want to be as spouses and such too. Was there anything else you would add to that for today's show?
Yeah, well, I would think that there's also, an assurance goes a long way. The assurance of I am for you, I'm with you. Sometimes in a heated argument, we could say things that we didn't intend to say. And so it really is that I take accountability for me, you take accountability for you. We come back and we assure one another that we're for one another. And sometimes there is this place in a fight, if you've done something wrong and in that cool down, you're like, man, I blew it. I called him a bumblebee, or whatever, just a mean old buzzard or whatever it is. I can't say, what I might technically say.
That's right, you can't. You can't say that on Facebook Live. That we will.
Every once in a while, that old flash comes up. And so in all of that, I might just need to say, babe, I'm sorry. I lost it. And the truth is you got a lot of the hostility, and really what was fueling it wasn't even what we were talking about. It's taken that place of what is my part? What do I need to apologize for? And I think that that's the key of, man, when you're given this heated argument, I'm still so often to tempt to be telling you what you should be apologizing for. And the truth is if we really want to come back together and make up and make out, right? Then I'm going to have to probably take accountability for what my part is. And sometimes I just have to come to you and say, you know what? I'm sorry. I did like how you did this, but how I reacted to it was so out of line.
I've had to do that a lot.
Oh,
I have over the years. I really have. I've had to come back because I used to have terrible temper, and so when we'd fight, we'd fight. You know what
yeah.
I mean? And I'd fly off the handle, and I'd say all kinds of crazy things, and with no sense of consequence.
Yeah.
And God really delivered me of that, but I had to have the desire to be delivered of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a great point. I can't take responsibility for your actions. You can't take responsibility for my actions, but I can take responsibility for my actions,
Right.
and you can take responsibility for your actions. And I think that it's so easy sometimes to dig our heels in the ground and to not give up or to try to stay with the same point. And again, if we want to make up and we want to honor our spouse and we don't want to shut them down, sometimes I've been guilty of shutting you down. I have a strong personality and I can be domineering sometimes. And I know in years past that when I do that, then it causes you just to shut down and feel like you don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And there's been times that I felt the same way
Yep.
over the years. And we've learned to really try to shift that focus again into how can we honor one another in this process. Yeah.
I think another great thing to make up is touch, like to a gentle one at the appropriate time. Sometimes we're still kind of ticked off, and it could just be like, let's table this and talk about it in the morning. But I just want you to know I love you. And it might be where my toes touch his toes under the sheets, or it might be where
You stuck that business and we're fixing to make up.
we're going to make up.
I'm just saying.
But it's the gentle touch. It is or sometimes maybe it's a question. Maybe your spouse kind of pulls away and they're not quite. It's like, what can we do to redeem this evening or this day? And begin to ask and be ready to receive. And that's the whole importance of that very first tip of the cool down. Don't come back yet until you really are cooled down and you're ready to. And if you have to do a couple cool downs and then come back, it's worth it just to say, okay, let's table it. We're getting it sideways again. And to allow that time of connection, touch, I think is extremely important. Mm-hmm. Our words of affirmation, that I'm for you, I'm sorry I conveyed anything other than that, and those questions of what can we do to redeem this time.
Yeah.
Anything you'd add?
No, I think that you know, because the things that are coming to mind, they're really a different show.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
They have to do with fighting fair. They have to do with, you know, things that we can do to cultivate. Now, I do think, you know, that after we've had a fight, we need to be sensitive to the fact that there's probably some, we need to be very intentional about, it's kind of like when you got a bruise on your arm. Mm-hmm. If I brush your arm, or I do this right now, you know, or I, you know, even give you a love pat or something like that, there's no sensitivity, you know. Mm-hmm. After we fought,
there might be
we may need to be aware that you know what I mean, that you know, if I brush that same topic, or if I brush you, you know, that you may be a little bit more sensitive, or I may be a little bit more sensitive after a fight because of something that's happened. And so I think that we just need to be very, very intentional after we fight, and to be intentional about focusing on, again, speaking life over our spouse, speaking life over our marriage, speaking life over our home, and affirming one another much more intentionally than we did before the fight. Mm-hmm. You know, I always like to do something nice for you afterwards.
It's like a little peace offering or something, you know?
Exactly.
Like, I remember one, can I tell on you?
Of course.
We got in a little bit of a sideways conversation, and he knew that he unraveled me. Now, wasn't because of where we're at, we didn't butt heads. A lot of times we unengage, you'll remember. We unengage, we choose to not fight. That's a great point to avoid the fights. But in this particular instance, you knew that you unraveled me in my world. And he came back with a sweet tea, or what was it? It was an Arnold Palmer thing.
Yeah. No, there's these teas that you like out of the fountain.
And there's only one tea I like, because most tea tastes like hay. But anyway, he brought me back this little peace offering, and it was just enough. It actually made me cry, because it was just his way of being very gentle to a situation that unraveled. And it all revolved around work and something
What was I sideways about that? Because I remember...
It was the Get Authorized course.
It was,
you unraveled on the
which
teaching.
Which I sometimes do.
Yep. He is a perfectionist when it comes to work, and you really want something to be excellent.
I want to make sure we're adding value. Yeah.
And I had worked really hard, and the day before, he said it was all crap. And I just kind of looked at him.
That sucks so bad.
And it was the intensity to which he thought it was crap. And then he saw my face, and you went and worked out, and I redid everything, and you came home with the tea that I loved. Anyway,
there were a couple of minor tweaks, but here's what the deal is. I'm cracking up about that because I feel like such a turd. The bottom line is that I was just off of my square, and we did just exactly what we shared with you all. Is we took the cool down period. I actually went to the gym.
Yep, and I cooled down by just not saying anything.
And when I came back from the gym, I picked you up a little peace offering treat.
Yep.
And I literally, she was sitting here in the chair. And listen, don't make too much about me about this. You know what I'm saying? Literally, I blow it all the time. But what I did is I literally got down on my hands and knees and I handed her treat, and I was like, baby, I am so sorry. Thank you for all of the work that you've done. It's great work. It really is. I love you and I apologize. And the cool thing is that, and this is something that we didn't talk about, but you're usually pretty quick, and I think both of us are, to reciprocate when someone apologizes if it's sincere.
Yeah.
And you did, and you were touched by the fact
Yep.
that I came back as humbly as I did, and maybe that's something that we should have said earlier. Is that when we come together, whether you're right or whether you're wrong, because there's always a certain piece of rightness on both parts, right?
Yeah.
In most cases. Practice humility, you know. Um, are people hating on me over here? I don't know.
They're doing like long live the goat.
I don't even know what that means. I'm gonna have to go back and look at your comments because
it's something
clearly they're
Chris,
interested.
Rudy, and Robert Bannister. Anyway, I love you guys. Hope you don't hate us. We were over here in our own conversation, and you guys were in yours. So
There it is. Well, listen, guys, I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties and the distractions in the beginning of this. I hope you're able to pick up a couple of good best practices and some things to make you think. I think the primary thing is to take the cool down period. I think it is come back and speak affirmations over one another when you're able to establish whether is this a good time to be able to come back to the subject matter.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even need to come back to the subject matter. Sometimes we just need to simply apologize for the way that we handled things and remind our spouse that, hey, I'm for you. We're going to get through this.
Right.
But I think that practicing humility on the backside and kind of beginning to do some of those intentional things that seem so counterintuitive in the makeup. And then I think we just have wild, crazy sex.
There you said it again.
I did say it again.
All right, guys. Hey, we'll catch you next week. Maybe we'll have the Millers on. I don't know. They stood us up this week. So.
They tried not to, but it happened anyway. Okay, so Summer, the goat
our
is
daughter's
slang
yes.
for today's
greatest of all time.
Oh,
thank you,
funny.
Summer. All right.
And those who, yeah, anyway.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week. We'll catch you next week. Same bat channel.
Yeah, I think
Right?
so.
Married for a Purpose at 10 a.m.